Well, welcome to the very first episode of Exceptionally Average. My name is Craig Flack.
I'm Steve Harris.
Steve, it is good to be with you in the State Line Collective Digital Media Room. We are starting a new show, so this is a big deal, right?
It is a big deal. And you know what? We're in the room for the first time together. We've been doing this kind of back and forth, separate individual things. We've got that going on. But to do this together, sit with one another and have this conversation, this is exciting.
Yeah, we still got some more work to do in the room. Everything's not fully finished yet. Still kind of getting things around. But we're finally at the point where we've been wanting to do work together and just share thoughts. The idea of this show is two average dudes.
That's right.
Talking, kind of sharing our thoughts. We're two Christian men, two husbands, two fathers, two kind of working stiffs.
That's exactly right.
And so the idea is, that to let people in on our conversation and how are we processing through things, talking about a whole lot of things. And so we're going to start with a 3-part teaching, or not, it's not even really 3-part conversation would probably be the best way to put it.
It really is going to be a conversation. It's going to be pretty raw. We're not going to do any editing here. It's just, like you said, it's two guys having a conversation. We're going to go through a 3-week series, or at least a 3-part series. Let's call it that. We're not really sure how this is going to play out, but we're going to talk about health. And the 3 parts of health we will talk about starting today is fitness and nutrition, how we strength train, how we talk about nutrition, how we apply those things, and talk about the emotional health as well, about relationships and how we discover love, how we find our passion in life in general. And then the 3rd part of it, I think the most important, that's going to tie and bind this all together, Pastor, is the spiritual element. We need that spiritual health. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be the final solution that we bring, and how we seek Christ, how we apply our everyday lives, and how we try to make that Christ-centered. So those are the 3 things we're going to talk about. Today we kick it off with the physical element.
I should say, I think we're going to probably mostly be talking to men. I think women can watch this and probably get something out of it. At least I know you and I feel far more comfortable talking about physical health to other men. That is a topic I don't want to have with any woman that I know. And so I think men and women would glean from it, but that's not always going to be true of Exceptionally Average. Just maybe for the next, maybe even just this one, it's going to be. But I think it's because of how tense we all get around physical health, right? We know, like, it's tongue in cheek, but you and I know that, like, that's a no-go zone with women, and we don't talk about those things. And it's because we know it's a big deal, but none of us are really doing good at it. Except you are kind of doing good at it. You turn 52 next week, right?
Next week.
But you pride yourself on being able to beat up any 18-year-old and take them on any race, right? I mean,
well, the mind and the body think differently. Yeah. So yes, the mind says that, but the body probably denies that altogether.
Old man strength?
I'm sorry?
At what age do you get old man strength?
I don't know yet.
Okay. So
I'm not there.
I
refuse to admit that I'm there yet. But you're absolutely right when you talk about we are primarily going to be of interest to men of all kinds of different ages, because let's face it, you're in your 30s, I'm almost 52 years old, so we bring a unique dichotomy to this whole thing. So there are things certainly men are going to glean from. However, it's also going to be a peek behind the curtain for many wives, many of the females and Christians in general, to see, what do exceptionally average guys think?
Yeah.
How do they process in their physical, their emotional, and their spiritual health, right? And then it's just an application of how do we do this every day? Because that's really what we're doing. We're just trying to get to the end of the day in some cases.
And if you're nauseated by the idea of just Steve and Craig talking, we have a women's show coming. And so we hope to launch it this fall. So if you're like, I'm never going to listen to these two, come back. We've got a women's show launching. But let's talk about this idea of physical health. Okay, you don't get to be, I know a lot of 52-year-olds. A lot of them aren't at least entertaining the idea of, I could probably take on that 30-something, tongue-in-cheek. Many of them are thinking about all their medications they have to take. Many of them, their bodies are breaking down. You're not in that case, but that doesn't happen by accident. I know that because I know your life. What's been your physical health journey? Have you always been physically fit? Has this been something that you came about in the past couple of years? What's kind of been your journey in that?
That's such an excellent question, because physically fit, the answer to that is no. Mm-hmm. Physically active, the answer to that is somewhat yes, but they function very independently from one another. And physical fitness for me, I was always active in high school and in my youth with sports, and I wasn't exceptional. I was exceptionally average. Yeah. Right? But I was good enough that I was competitive, and I love that part of being competitive. So I never really lost that as I got into my 20s and certainly into college and past. And
took it some into the business world. And
I did. Sure. You take it to, and you apply it to leadership, right? And you try to do that, and then you try to apply it to your marriage and your kids. And when you get to that part, and you're in the middle of that right now with kids that are starting to be active. They're in that elementary zone where, hey, maybe it's youth soccer and you're kicking that off on Saturdays at 6 a.m. in Ulida, Ohio, which is 45 minutes, 50 minutes away. And now your health becomes second fiddle, okay? And your focus becomes your kids. So it's not unusual that in your 30s, you may remain active, but don't mistake that for being physically fit, right? And I think we find that out.
I wouldn't have thought about it like that.
You find yourself when you're 35 years old all of a sudden, and think about this. At the age of 34, you have a majority of your life still ahead of you. That is the cutoff. So at age 34, you know what happens? So
you're saying I'm on the downhill now?
You are on the uphill. I refuse to believe that you're on the downhill. But if you think about having to live your life, a majority of your life past the age of 34, in the time that you start to, most people think, break down physically, that's a hard thing to come to, isn't it? Yeah. And I experienced that. In my 30s, I was active, but I wasn't physically fit, and I was miserable. As a matter of fact, I was 28 pounds heavier than I am right now.
Really?
Yeah. And it really hit me when, just a little insight, when I was adopted. I discovered my birth mother.
Okay.
And it was a blessing that she and that family came into my life.
Wonderful.
Through that relationship, I found out that my birth father had died from a heart attack at age 42.
And so you never knew any of this stuff. You didn't have that genetic window that you could look at your adoptive father, because you'd say, he's my dad, but he's not my biological. We don't share the blood. That's a big deal. That kind of hits you.
It sure did, and it hit me hard.
I didn't know that.
It was a big wake-up call for me.
42 is young.
He was 42, out mowing the lawn, fell over dead. Yeah. And so that really woke me up and said, I need to do something. I don't want that to be me. And I also wanted to honor Christ with my responsibility of the body that he has given me. There is an element to that I think just gets dismissed. And I've been given a lot of gifts, and certainly with my mind, but also with my physical well-being. And all of us, that goes for all of us. And I wanted to find a way to honor that. At the same time, I wanted to be able to grow old gracefully and have the opportunity to play with grandkids down the road. And when I'm 70 years old, I don't want that excuse to be, well, I'm 70 years old, this is the way I'm supposed to look, because I don't believe that for a moment. I think our bodies were genetically engineered to be able to be physically fit late into our 70s and 80s.
Not that it's easy, but that it can happen.
That's absolutely correct. So that was my motivation. And
so when did that kind of kick in?
That kicked in really for me probably when in my 40s, but I still didn't understand it.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to be healthy, but we all want to be healthy.
Yeah. If you ask someone, do you want to be fat or skinny?
Exactly.
Do you want to be healthy or unhealthy?
Right.
No one's going to be like, no, I'll take fat and,
yeah.
But
I'll take couch potato all day long for 500, Alex.
Doing it and wanting it. I want to be a millionaire. I'm not.
That's right.
At time of publish, I am not.
Well, you have, so with the physical, and that's what we're here to talk about today, we talk about, okay, we have this, we're going to go to the gym and we're going to get healthy, right? And there's a part of it that we really miss. And that's the nutrition element.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to apply both. I didn't know how to marry both of them together in order to be able to maximize that efficiency with my overall health.
Most guys, I think, just think, I will go pump the iron, I'll go lift, and I'll be fine. And I've learned recently, and you've known for many years, health happens in the kitchen, period.
Absolutely.
Now, fitness can happen in the gym, but health is, you will not outwork a bad fork. Like if your fork is getting you fat, you can sling weights around all day, or you will not, your body won't repair the way it needs to, these kinds of things. But none of us learn that.
Right.
Or at least when our health teachers were talking, like we were all showing the grain, the food pyramid with like eat 12 servings of grains. Don't do that.
Do not.
Like that's all we were taught in health class. And so there's a huge growth edge with that.
That's exactly right. And it was a real trial and error on my part to finally get that down. And I finally had to access people who knew more than me. And I found myself going to the gym, 4 or 5 nights a week and really putting in some of these HIIT fitness workouts that work up a sweat and figuring, why am I not losing the weight? Well, just like you said, I wasn't applying it in the kitchen. And so that nutrition, not diet. I want to avoid the word diet. It has to be nutrition because
diet by definition is temporary.
Absolutely.
The way we think about it. Now, diet as an overall, what I eat, that's one thing. But most people say diet, they think the thing I'm going to do to look better in a bathing suit.
Right. And
you meant your overall diet as in everything I put into my body.
Absolutely.
The diet of Steve Harris.
Absolutely. And I like to think of it as really nutrition. If it's food, it's nutrition because nutrition is sustainable. Diets are not. But that's how I finally figured it out. And it really only came together for me about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it started to dial in and I put it all together with the help of others. And now I'm able to pay that forward. And speaking of paying that forward, I want to ask you a question because what was it? Let's say it was 6 months ago. I'm betting it was November.
Yep.
I got a text from you, an unusual text out of the blue. And you and I, let's share some insight. We had become relatively pretty good friends at that point.
Yeah, you guys have been attending the church for a couple of years.
Right.
And we were working on this project, figuring out how to get Finish Strong launched and how to get this digital media room off the ground.
Certainly. But I got this text from you, and it was from Craig Flagg, and it said, Steve, I need to get healthy. I need your help. I need you to mentor. I need you to be my accountability partner. And take it from there.
Yeah. We had walked through a couple different things because your book had come out in what, 20?
It came out in 2021, September 21.
Okay. And mine came out in November of 21.
By the way, what is the name of your book, please?
The Lord is my shepherd. Or who is your shepherd? That's not the name of the book. The Lord is my shepherd, but who is your shepherd? And
mine is Rain Falls Down. And this is why we are
authors, folks.
We are exceptionally average authors as well.
Self-published, no publishing company would ever take it. But we thought we had enough words to say that we wrote a book and formed a digital media channel.
That's right. So that's going to go on every single resume.
Yeah, the CV. Yeah, author.
That's right.
But that was a huge deal for me, actually, because I filmed a book trailer, as one does, to try and let people know, hey, I wrote a book. You don't write a book to not sell copies and get copies out there. And I filmed this book trailer, and dude, it was really sobering because do you ever have that moment where you look, you see the picture of yourself and you're like, dang, my hairline's receded, or dang, that's an unflattering photo, or dang, mine was, I was wearing this shirt that I like the shirt, but I had bought it the year before in 2020 because I finally had grown out of my larges and I needed to go up to the XLs, the big boys, stuff starting to do. And I had put on some weight. And so I bought these bigger shirts that were my I'll never need to buy bigger than this. So I went and bought 6 of them because I've got to dress decent for work, button down, very casual jeans, but still like a collared shirt. And I might have to go to a nursing home or whatever. And I'm watching this video, and dude, I was fat, and that was true before that date. But there was something about watching it, and I'm watching the shirt start to pull apart at like the buttons, like as a button down would do when it's too tight. It's like started. And it was just this moment of like,
was that your line in the sand?
Yeah, it really was. And because here's the thing, and I can say this now, and I probably have only ever told my wife, I haven't talked to, I was writing that book, and I know you agree, was the most proud I've been of something I did. It is as close as you and I will ever come to childbirth. Like, it is a nightmare, and it's wonderful, and it's the hardest thing you'll do, and it's the best thing you'll do, and it's this huge accomplishment. And all I could think about is like, you fatty. Like this trailer, and that's not healthy on my end. Like I should have been able to celebrate, but I just looked at myself, and the thing was, it was like, how did it get this bad? This has gotten out of hand. And so I've struggled with my weight my whole life. Like I had to shop in the Husky section when I was a kid, big boned. When adults can't call you fat, they just call you big boned. That's what I learned as a child, because no one calls the seventh grader fat. They're just like, oh, he's big boned. It's like, well, no, you're just calling me fat. But I played, I was just do offensive line and stuff like that, or shot put, so that was my line in the sand. And I was the heaviest I had ever been, 6 foot, 240 pounds, which is obese. The thing was, and this is why it's important that you and I talk about it. I'm American. I was American normal. Like I wasn't morbidly obese. I still could run around and walk and stuff.
You were what you would describe, or maybe what I would describe as still accepted by society.
100%. No one looked at me and thought I was skinny. There wouldn't have been anyone that said, or even in shape or decent, maybe what they might think now of like, oh, okay, but they definitely would have said Craig's overweight, but who isn't?
Isn't that true? We can say that about all of us. I mean, we look at one another and, we say we shouldn't judge, but we judge. That's what we do. We're human beings, right? So when we look at a 20-year-old, we expect them to be relatively fit. Yeah. When we look at a 30 or 40-year-old, we expect them to probably have about 10 or 15 pounds.
Yeah. I've got a beautiful wife. She's not going to divorce me. Right. I'm comfortable.
Yeah, you're totally vested.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm 100% bought in. And so it's one of those where I had this moment, and I'm looking at this picture, and I look at it often. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but it's my motivation, because I struggle with, I don't feel like I've come that far at this point, and I really have. But it's the slow boil. And so, so I sent you a text, but I knew exactly what you knew then of, I've been fat my whole life. I've wanted to be skinny my whole life. What makes now any different? I don't know what I'm doing. And so the one thing I knew is when I've beaten things in my life, whether it be pornography, whether it be, other things that I've struggled to overcome, but by God's grace have then overcome, it's been through accountability. It's been by having specifically another Christian brother to come alongside and to hold me accountable, because I don't like to fail. I like to succeed. I don't like to send the text that says I did X or I didn't succeed. I have a big ego. I have pride, and that's why you and I get along well, because we both want to, what I say I'm going to do, I want to do. But when it's only you holding yourself accountable, it's one thing. When I knew every Friday I have to text Steve and check in. I'm going to talk to him about my numbers. That changed the game for me. And in addition, it really changed. You helped me. You were kind of my Yoda as far as learning the kitchen, because that's been the biggest journey. I still have never joined a gym. So I'm down 48 pounds as of today, 6 months. I've never joined a gym. Now I exercise at home, but I'm not swinging around a lot of weights and doing a lot of stuff. I try and do some strength training at home, and that's important. But my weight loss has come in the kitchen.
That's an important statement you just made, because I think there's a couple things going on there. Number one, people find their physical fitness measurable, and it is measurable. but they typically only use one unit of measure. Yeah. What is it?
Scale.
It's the scale.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Which is a liar.
It's a huge liar. It does not give a full, broad picture of overall health. So
yeah, you get it. The scale is dangerous. It's got to be a part of it.
It is
absolutely dangerous.
It's an element of the.
But we've made it the peak. We've made it the whole thing, and it really shouldn't be.
We base our happiness on it.
Yeah.
We base our happiness on that
and
scale.
Guilty as charged.
And so am I. I'm on the scale multiple times, and I had to get away from that. I try to get away from that. But here's what happens, and this is why weight loss becomes so difficult, because people focus on weight loss. They don't focus on fat loss. Yep. They don't focus on resting heart rate. Mm-hmm. They don't focus on moving away from medications and to healthy vegetables or healthy nutrition. They don't focus on, building physical strength. They focus on how skinny can I get? Yeah. How can I fit into that shirt that I used to fit into, or those pair of pants that I used to fit into 4 years ago? And that becomes our unit of measure, and that's very dangerous. And here's what happens. The mind and the body do not work together at all, ever. And we think that the mind controls the body. Let me give you an example. You go to the gym and you sweat and sweat and sweat, or you go to your basement and do that, and you come up, and in your mind, you've sweated 3, 4, 5 pounds off. Mm-hmm. But when you get on the scale, it says no. Mm-hmm. And when you wake up in the morning, it's like you haven't really accomplished anything. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, gosh, I've been doing this for a week. I've been doing this for a month, and I'm not losing any weight. Well, it's because the mind and the body don't really work together. It takes time to trust the process. Yeah, and we have heard that over and over again by mentors of ours, right? And we have to trust that process.
That's why you need a good process.
Absolutely. And that process is, go to the gym or go to your basement or get some weights.
You got to exercise.
Do something.
You've got to move your body.
You need to function and move.
You have to move your body.
Have to move your body, no doubt.
Even just for what I would tell people, just for even cardiovascular health. Just again, your heart's a very important part of your body. Your cardio health is a really, speaking from your biological father, having that. You have to move your body.
Have to. But you also have to marry that up with nutrition. Yeah. And then it takes a while. It takes probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It can take up to 6 weeks for your body to figure out what you're trying to do, because it's not listening to your mind.
I remember texting you probably in January. So I'd lost the dumb weight. First, you lose, you can drop, as a fat guy, you'll lose 10 pounds quick because you're not going to McDonald's every day. You're not having a beer at night. You're not eating a bowl of ice cream. So you're going to drop water weight because you're not probably drinking enough water. You're going to drop just stupid weight. But once you get through that 5 to 10 pounds, it's going to become based off of caloric burn and fat burn or muscle burn or what you're burning. And I remember texting you, and you just text back, our bodies are dumb. and I remember you telling me this, and it made sense. Our bodies are designed to not starve.
That's right. They have to protect themselves.
It thinks you're starving now, because it is. I was in what is called a calorie deficit, meaning it's just math. If I burn 3,000 calories a day through exercise and normal basal metabolic rate, just what I burn being alive, that's how much coal my little body threw in the engine that day. And I ate 2,000 calories. I had a deficit of 1,000 calories. That's just basic math. That is the only way you're going to lose weight, is if you eat at a deficit. You can't eat more calories than you burn. And but my body is going, oh my gosh, Craig's eating less. We must be in a death camp. And so keep the fat reserves that we've built for this exact reason. Our body's actually really smart. Hey, he ate 4,000 calories rather than 3,000. We're not just going to burn that extra energy. Go put it in his gut. Because for all of human evolution, but for the past 50 years, famine kills you like that.
That's right.
So having the little extra fat served humans really, really, really well, because you had a much greater chance to starve yourself to death or be starved then we're the first generation that eats themselves to death. I mean, do you ever think about that? Like our great grandparents,
it's our medication.
Yeah. That would live through the Great Depression, knew people that would starve. We don't have people. And thank God for that. We don't want to see starvation. We've gone the other way.
We sure have.
And so my body was in shutdown mode of like, it wasn't burning. And so I was doing all the right thing. And it probably stayed like that in January for a good week or two. And that's when most people will quit.
That's right.
Because I wasn't seeing success on the scale. And then again, it happened again in March. And I was frustrated and texting you and that kind of thing. My body was readjusting. And you can plateau in this thing. And so that is why I think two things are so crucial. Having the plan. So when you lose 50 pounds, people come up to you constantly. What did you do? Right. And it's like, when you tell them diet and exercise, they're like, no.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah. But what I tell them is all the food I eat is from Walmart. It's from Aldi. It's from, Chief, a grocery store here in town.
It's available to everyone.
This afternoon for lunch, I had a veggie pasta with 4 ounces of chicken on it. So high protein, low calorie. That's what I had for lunch. That's not diet food. I think it's actually delicious food. Like, I'm not suffering through that.
It's your nutrition.
But it serves the goal.
Right.
So I got that right. And then I think the other thing is, and we've touched on this, you've got to have a bigger why. So for some that are watching, they might not really be in on the faith and they're thinking, I don't know about this God thing. That's not a good why for me. Maybe your why is your kids. Maybe your why is your wife. Maybe your why is when you grow older, you want to be walking up and down the steps. My why was I stand up every Sunday morning in front of this congregation and they call me pastor and they call me Craig and friend. And I did not feel, no one had ever said this to me. Everyone is very polite. I personally didn't feel like I was being a good steward of the body God gave me. I also felt very hypocritical in that my weight had nothing to do with medical conditions. There's people that struggle with certain medical conditions that they take medicine and it's very hard, or thyroid issues. My weight was directly related to my lack of self-control. So how do I call Steve, congregant, to be a self-controlled husband in areas of finances or your tongue and your temper? And then I am very visibly living uncontrolled with my mouth and what I eat. And God,
it's a hard thing to hide. You can hide many sins, right?
You can
but
be a
that's
gambling
not
addict.
one of them.
I can't see your checkbook. I have no idea what you spend. I'm assuming you're not, because you still have a house and kneecaps. But I was wearing for everyone to see. And that's why we feel a lot of shame with weight, because people can see that. And so for me, it finally just clicked of like, man, I think God has better for me than this. And I don't know why, but for 34 years of being fat, counting toddler years, I suppose in that, I'm 35 now. I never thought to bring God into it. I just never thought about what would it look like to honor God with my body. And when I say bring God into it, I mean praying about strength to make the right choices, repenting for where I felt like maybe I failed in the past. My big thing was I used food to cope. So as pastoral ministry is stressful. And I would go, instead of, you think a pastor, you probably go into the sanctuary to pray. When it's stressed, you just get on your knees, pastor, and just call out to God. No, I went and got a 20-ounce Coke and a Kit Kat. That was my go-to. And I coped instead of going to the Lord, which I would tell you to do, by the way. You come to me, Craig, I'm stressed. Well, brother, man, you gotta go to Christ with that. And it's like, is that what you do? And it's like, oh no, I go to sugar, caffeine, and chocolate.
Right.
That's hypocritical. And I try not to live that way if I can avoid it. So bringing God into that, I had to unpack a lot of unhealthy areas in my life.
Craig, one of the things that you kind of reminded me of as you're talking is kind of trying to figure out, because people are trying to figure out themselves, why is change for me so hard? Why can't I do the things that I want to do? And I would make this argument, and then I want to throw it to you and find out why your change was so hard and kind of how you brought it together. But I think that the brain has two minds. We are of one brain, but two minds. We have the logical side, which I'll call the rider. Okay, that's the person riding. we have an emotional side, which I'm going to call the elephant. And if you're interested in reading more about that, there's a book called Switch by Dan and Chip Heath that you can read more about why change is so difficult. But you have the rider and the elephant. The rider is the logical. The elephant is the emotional. And the reason change is so difficult is because that elephant, being the emotional, is very hard to control. It's a very big, heavy animal. And there's not a rider in the world that if the elephant wants to do something,
it's going to do it.
The elephant's going to do it. Think about this.
That's why they call it a ride. You're along for it.
You're right. So you're walking through the kitchen on the way to bed at night, and you see the box of Oreos or the bag of Oreos on the counter. The rider says what? The rider says,
go to bed.
I'm not touching those. Those aren't for me. I can't have that.
Yeah, they're for the kids.
Right. What does the elephant say? The elephant says, shut up. I want that.
Yeah.
Guess who wins when they don't agree with one another? The elephant always wins. So trying to get that logical and the emotional to marry is the big challenge that we face, and we can't figure out why
we end up looking like an elephant.
Yes. We look like the elephant. It's the emotional that keeps winning.
Yep.
And ultimately it comes down to, and I can say this, and it sounds kind of pithy, but it comes down to the motivation versus the discipline, right? The motivation is short-lived, and we wonder why people who start their New Year's resolution on January 1st.
Which I did many, many years.
And guess what happens on January 7th?
80%.
We quit because the elephant says, I am done with this. Enough. And so how did you get that logical and that emotional to marry? Because you seem to be in a real zone right now.
So I had to really unpack that it is okay to be hungry.
Okay.
So my emotions tell me that anytime I feel hunger, I am justified in eating. And that might be true for some people because their hunger cues aren't sending it off. For me, that brought me to obesity. So my emotions told me, you're hungry. It is okay to eat when you are hungry. But the problem is, was I really hungry? Or was I stressed? Was I anxious? Did I actually not feel good and I was interpreting indigestion and upset stomach for I just need to eat? So learning to be hungry has been huge for me. People have said, haven't you been hungry? Yeah, a lot. I had a lot to work through. I had plenty of fat reserves. My body was ready to go for this season. But beyond that, there's this discipline of fasting in the Christian church where I think God uses us turning our heart away from food specifically because food brings so much comfort, and we specifically turn it away to seek God better and seek Him and seek comfort in Him. And so in some ways, while I would eat every day, I had to fast for months of just the stuff I really wanted. You know, I didn't have to do this, but I chose to. So I was working through a lot of mental things with food. I didn't have a pop for 3 or 4 months. Now, you could have a diet pop occasionally, and it's low calorie. You can have a pop if you want to. Do whatever you want. But I chose not to because I was addicted. I didn't have sweets or cookies for a couple months. You can have a cookie and lose weight. That's okay. I couldn't because I had a really unhealthy relationship with them and I had to break that. So the elephant, I was worried like an addict that the elephant, if it got just the taste, it was going to go right back. And so I had to pull back. As the writer, I finally got a hold of this and it was like, I just can't. And then, so overcoming that emotions and then also having a goal that was bigger than the feelings. So I wanted to get healthy. That was a big goal, and I finally meant it. That was bigger than the feelings. So my feelings told me you want a bowl of ice cream. My goal was to get healthy. Well, the feelings were undercutting my goals.
Absolutely.
So
the elephant was winning.
Yeah, and at a certain point, I finally just made the decision. I want my goals. I want my goals more. this is really easy for me to do financially. We're a single income household. My wife stays home. I know your wife stayed home for a while. You've got to be careful with money when you're a single income household. I mean, everyone has to be careful with money, but we have one income, and I'm a pastor. And so we are very disciplined with our finances. I have all sorts of things I want. I want all the time. I just don't buy. Now, my wife might disagree with that. I'm definitely a spender, but like, I want all the time. I just choose not to because it defeats our goals. We want her to stay home. That's our number one goal, that she's able to be a stay-at-home mom. So if that means we don't have X, just don't buy it. I want it to be healthy. So if that means I can't have a cookie in this regard, just don't have it. Saying it and doing it are kind of miles apart, but that is, people really have to walk through their relationship with food. And if you grew up, Steve, you didn't grow up the way I did. If you've always been the fat kid, if you grew up, you were always made fun of, and I was always made fun of for my weight and picked on for my weight and stuff. And that's why I developed a very quick wit and humor, because I would just give it back to you. So I didn't get made fun of as much, because a fat kid that can make fun of you back is less of a target. But you start to see yourself as that. And it's hard to break free from, can I be anything but fat?
Let me ask you a question. And I think this is an important question that people want to hear from somebody who's self-admitted, that has been through this, like yourself. What does somebody in that situation need from friendships? Mm-hmm. What do they need from their close loved ones? What do they need to hear? What needs to be said to them? Because you receive messages maybe a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more temperamentally and sensitively, if that's a word, than maybe somebody else who is healthy, because you're trying to hide something that is obviously out there, and that is your weight. So what do those people in that situation, what do they want to hear? What do they need from others?
I think for a lot of people, there's nothing anyone can do. Because it's such a personal thing that if they're it's no different than a drug addict. And by the way, sugar is actually a highly addictive drug. So it's literally like a drug addict. But if they're bound and determined to eat themselves to death, they will. But the biggest thing for me with you specifically, what I needed was just accountability and love and grace. So you never would have come to me and been like, bro, you're obese, get it together, what's wrong with you? But I also knew who's someone I could reach out to who won't lie to me. And that was you. So when I came to you and said, Steve, I want to work on my physical health, you weren't like, why? You don't need to. Like, you're like, yeah, it's good.
I asked you two questions. What were they?
How do you want me to hold you accountable? And what was the second one?
What are your goals?
What are my goals? Yeah. So you made it about me, but I so love that there's so many people going off your question that would be like, you're perfect, you're wonderful. You didn't blow smoke. And I appreciate that about that. And I think as good friends, we could do that. We had that relationship. If we were just an acquaintance, I might have been like, all right, dude, you're not perfect either. Right. But as friends, it's like, I know Steve loves me. I know he cares about me, but he also has eyeballs. So like he can also see. And it is actually an act of love and care to say, I want you to be healthier mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I get that all the time. I talk to people all the time. I want them to be spiritually healthy. That's my whole goal, is to find spiritual health. And I come across a lot of unhealthy spiritual people. Coming alongside them and just being like, get healthy, do this stuff. It's not helpful. But coming alongside them and saying, hey, you've got a blind spot, and I love you and you don't see it, and I want you to grow in this way, that can be a big deal. I actually do think this is where maybe men and women are different. I think guys can be a little bit more brutal with each other and a little bit more honest with each other. And then a little bit of iron sharpening iron in this way, and kind of calling each other to a higher standard. So again, I think, it's hard. You got to have that relationship, but it's like, if you have someone in your life that you love that's unhealthy physically, and you are healthy, or maybe you're not, maybe you want to go to them and say, let's do this together. Be honest, be graceful, but also just say, this comes from a place of love. Are you happy? Now, if they tell you to go pound sand, just leave it be. But I think that's the biggest thing. And man, you want to pray up before you go into that conversation. That's hard. Now, once I opened the door for you, you came in, and that was great, because then you started helping me And I think you felt like, okay, now I have some freedom to ask and poke around some of these areas.
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I appreciate that. And I'm so glad you did, because there's something that, people who are healthy or fit are not just healthy and fit. They aren't born that way. There is a maintenance. There is a process to keep that, because it's an everyday thing. It's not like, okay, I've reached my health goal, now I can stop and I can just go back to doing whatever I was doing before. No, it is a daily process.
Yeah, if you maintaining, that's why it's not diet, it's
nutrition.
Yeah, someone asked, they said, how much do you exercise? And I wear a Fitbit, and I was like, oh, let's look. And last week it was like 4 hours. Well, that was not true of Craig Flack last year. He didn't have 4 hours of some type of dedicated exercise. And that's not that's a regular week for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the new normal now.
Right.
It's just gotta be, and that for me, that's swinging some kettlebells, that's doing some push-ups, that's doing some sit-ups, that's walking on the treadmill, that's riding the bike, that's doing some light jogging. That's my exercise.
It's just taking a walk around the neighborhood with your wife.
My number one form of exercise is walking.
Let me ask you a question. It's changed you emotionally, obviously, physically. There's probably more of a spiritual connection. As you mentioned, you brought God into the factor. What has been the impact on your relationship with your wife, the relationship with your kids?
The kids, it's really funny because my daughter, Elsie, notices it. Like, I think there's a sense of pride in that, because she would see me go, I work out at night because I just don't have time in the morning. I don't want to wake up in the morning.
I don't either.
And so I work out at night, and that's fine. And it's in my basement because I'm not going to a gym. I can go down to the basement at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and that's fine. Other than drinking a ton of water and having to get up 4 times at night to go pee. But that's, we make our choices. And so my daughter would see me go down there a lot, and she saw this for months and months and months now. And so if you ask my daughter,
she's how old?
She's 9. And so if you ask her, she would say, my dad's getting healthy. And she was like all about it because she's in gym class and they talk about physical health and stuff like that. And so it's been cool to see that. And she's definitely, I doubt she's noticed a difference weight wise or anything. I don't think kids are as aware of that. But she definitely notices, and her and I take a lot of walks together now, which is really cool. The wife, she's been an awesome support. For her, unfortunately, my wife has always been very skinny. She's gorgeous. I so outkicked my coverage. But my wife would be the first person to tell you she's never ate healthy. She's got a great metabolism and, might not eat as much as me, a Craig-sized portion and a Becca-sized portion where it's very different. But she's gotten drug into this quite a bit because where she just go to cook certain things and I'm like, I'm not eating that. I'm just not. Like, I can't. And she's like, well, what do you want to have? And I'm like, tell you what, why don't I make some grilled chicken? We'll do some grilled chicken, some rice, and some broccoli. And she's like, okay. That's a great meal. That's like a staple. If you're going to lose weight, you better love you some air fryer chicken and rice and broccoli, or maybe not even the rice, depending on your carbs for that day. So I've drug her into it as well, but it's made me more confident with her. I mean, here's the thing. Every guy watching this, I'm not being too frank when I say, like, we want to look good for our wife.
Sure.
We want them to desire us. And dude, look at yourself. Like, I mean, when you're 50 pounds heavier, you're fat. You got a big man boobs and a big gut. And it's like, I know my wife loved me and found me attractive. And I know all that to be true. I'm not trying to say that because she'd be mad if I insinuated otherwise. But I also know that it doesn't hurt being 50 pounds lighter. And it doesn't hurt having less gut and that kind of thing and being more fit. And so I think she just has appreciated my commitment to it. And I so appreciate her because it's become, you will not get healthy unless you think about it every day. In spiritual, physical, you have to be intentional. So she's heard more about protein than she ever wanted to hear because what are the two things you and I care about most? For me, protein and calories.
That's exactly
total
right.
Calories. Fats, carbs, proteins. We care about our macros. And why don't you talk about that real quick? Will you give a 1-minute apologetic for protein real quick? Because I didn't know this. So I was at a major protein deficit And I reached out to you in January and I said, Steve, I am busting my butt and I'm not losing anything. And you're like, what's your protein at? Well, I'm tracking on my food. And I was at around 60 to 70 grams a day. And now I'm at minimum 150. So I double it. You got me to double it. You wanted me higher than that. And I know you are higher, but it was the key that unlocked everything for me. So if you got some people watching that are at a protein deficit and they're cutting calories and they're like, why can't I lose? There's a reason behind that. You want to just talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate the question. You're absolutely right. So, people think that we need to be in a caloric deficit. That's only sort of true. Mm-hmm. We need to be properly caloried.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a certain height.
You can lose weight with eating burning what you're doing because you're turning that fat into something else.
Absolutely. So you have to be at a certain calorie to be healthy, right? Because we talked about being too skinny. We talked about being too heavy, and people think, oh, well, I'm only eating 1,200 calories a day. Well, you're 6'2", and your body's in starvation mode. Mm-hmm. And as someone has told us before, your body thinks it's being chased by a bear.
Yeah.
So it's protecting itself. It's protecting its environment because it's in stress mode right now, and you're not doing it any favors. So we need to eat to be healthy. Think about this. You put gas in your car to go to, let's drive from Salina, Ohio to Pittsburgh, PA, okay? If you put a half a gallon of gas in your car, are you going to make it any further than Wapakoneta?
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is you're not fueling your car. We know how much fuel we need to put in our car to get from Salina, Ohio to Pittsburgh, PA. Mm-hmm. But what we don't understand is how much fuel we need to put in our bodies to keep it functioning and healthy. So here's what I would say about protein and carbohydrates and fats. And people think that carbohydrates and fats are 4-letter words.
No.
They are not.
If you're going to exercise, you better have them.
You need them. Mm-hmm. They are energy that provide quickness and physicality, if that's a word. They provide endurance, but the protein supports the muscle. And let's talk about that. Let's take a deeper dive. So you were eating 60 grams of protein when you first started. You're like, man, I'm doing the thing, right? I'm in it. When you're eating 60 grams of protein, this makes me laugh. I can't wait to see your face when I say this. You were eating enough protein to support the muscle mass of my 60-pound bulldog. That was it. Okay. So protein requirements are this. You need to be eating the same number of grams of protein as your desired weight. I'll give you, for instance, my target weight is, I'm going to say it's 200 pounds. Okay. And it's roughly that. Maybe a little bit more.
If you have abs, more. About less.
I cannot confirm nor deny that is true. So let's say it's 200 pounds is my target weight. Maybe I weigh 225 pounds. Well, my target for my protein intake on a daily basis needs to be 200 grams or 195 grams. It needs to meet or be equivalent to my desired weight, not my current weight, my desired weight. And that will support, it only supports that current weight, right? Or that desired weight, I should say. I apologize. So if you're eating only 150 grams of protein and you're trying to be 200 pounds, you're falling 50 grams short of what you need to inhale on a daily basis to meet that. See, we think protein, I'm going to put on all this mass and all this muscle. No, all you're doing is supporting the muscle that you have. Yeah. Then I was really proud of you because then you said, wow, I'm up to 120 grams. Wow, that's great, Craig. Now you're supporting the muscle mass of your wife, just slightly over that, right? So protein is critical and we have to have it every day. And it does a couple things. Number one, it supports the muscle mass. We talk about that. And number two, it cuts down on the need for the unnecessary junk.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because now you feel satiated.
Yep.
Apply that with water intake on a daily basis. And now all of a sudden you have that feeling of fullness, and it doesn't become, oh my gosh, I'm at that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock afternoon. I need that Mountain Dew. I need that Snickers bar. It becomes, man, I don't know how I'm going to get dinner down because I have to do that in about 3 hours. And that becomes really satisfying.
Yeah.
And when you feel full like that, now your body starts to understand the process. It gets in a groove, and you start to burn. You start to burn the fat. You don't lose weight, you lose fat.
And you'll learn that too, because if you're not losing diameter, you've got a problem. So you should be shrinking. Right. So even if you hate the scale and don't want to have a bad relationship to that, make a relationship with the tape measure. If your pants still fit and all that stuff, and your shirt and your clothes, like, that's when you know you're doing the right thing,
right?
Because that's burning the fat, and you hopefully should be increasing in muscle and stuff. But all right, so we've talked a ton. We talked a long time. Let's wrap it up. Let's say, what are one or two pieces of advice? We'll both give some, just if someone who's watching this. All right, you've got Craig in October sitting here watching it, and because of the internet's a weird place, it found their way to them, and they suffered through us rambling for an hour. What's your one or two piece of advice for them if they want to engage physical health?
That's a great question. I would tell you that you need to hit the protein numbers and figure out what your target weight is for your height and what that is realistically, right? And then meet that with the grams of protein. Now, chances are you're probably not going to do it with just chicken or just turkey. You're going to have to probably add some part of it, a protein nutrient along with that, a powder or drink.
You can get creative though.
You sure can. So the protein is an absolute critical factor.
You think about it every meal.
You sure do.
And every snack.
You're
My
right.
snacks are protein based.
I'm gonna take this to number 2, and it's not even going to be physical exercise yet. Number 2, drink half of your body weight in ounces of water. So if you're 200 pounds, drink 100 ounces of water every day. Yes, you will be going to the bathroom a lot.
If you hang out with Steve and I'm surprised we didn't have to pause the taping. We haven't. We both made it through without.
We're not going to tell them whether we have or haven't.
Yeah.
But drink the water. Now you feel that feel satiated. You feel
and you don't
full.
have the wild swings on the scale too.
You do not.
Which is if you come to me and go, I lost 1.5 pounds today. No, you didn't.
So I think of making it simple, right? Let's make it simple for people who just want to do one or two things, and it's not overwhelming. Like they don't need to go buy a whole new grocery list. Add protein to your diet. Add more protein to your diet, because the chances are you're probably undernourished in that category.
Real quick, what are some of your favorite proteins, not powders and stuff? What are your go-tos?
My go-tos are I love buying turkey. I love buying chicken and doing some different things with the chicken. I love eggs. Eggs are really good. Eggs are not bad to say high in cholesterol. Forget that. That's just a load of crap. Okay. Eggs are really good for you.
My doctor literally told me yesterday, there's not one study that supports that the cholesterol found in eggs increases your actual bad cholesterol number.
It does not. Absolute lie. You're right. So eggs and get full in the morning. I like to eat more carbs, add my carbs in the morning, because I can tend to burn them throughout the day as opposed to eating them at 7 o'clock at night. Yeah. But get the protein in. And if we want to talk more about that, come talk to us, right? Yeah. You and I we can have that conversation. But number 2, drink the water. Yeah. Make sure you're getting half of your body weight in ounces.
Those are good. I think mine would be track your numbers. So I didn't know this going in. I'm pretty type A, so I like to track things. I like a good budget. Yeah. Shocking, right?
We're going to have one of those news alerts going across the bottom. Breaking news, Craig Flack.
But people, I didn't realize this. People hate tracking their numbers. They don't like a food diary. They don't do that stuff. I use MyFitnessPal. I use First Form.
I use My Transformation First Form. Yep.
And so we both use different, but we both track everything we eat. And if I'm at home, I'm weighing most things I eat. And why weigh? Because my definition of a serving size was way off. Now, it's funny because I'm like a little rainmaker with 3 ounces of turkey now. I can make it like dead on, that kind of thing. But you've got to track your food. If you tell me I want to get out of debt, but I refuse to use a budget, I'm going to call you insane. If you tell me you want to get healthy, but I refuse to track my food, I'm going to tell you good luck, because you will not know your protein numbers. You will not know that you're hitting under, you can hit your protein, but if you do it all through red meat, you're going to be sky high on your fats. Like if you're just eating a ton of, 80-20 ground chuck, it's going to be a bad day for you. I picked like the most fatty meat there was. But if you're eating a lot of tuna and fish and jerky and some, you can still eat beef. Yogurt, yeah. And these kinds of things, fat-free cheeses and stuff like that. It's great. Eggs. So you've got to track your numbers every single day. I'll hit tomorrow or the next day, 150 days in a row on MyFitnessPal. So if there's any success, it's because I have gone and logged my food for 150 days. Now, when I'm out to eat, I don't bring a scale along. That's obsessive, and you shouldn't. Like, you should be able to go out, but you better believe that I'm kind of knowing what's going on. And there are just times where I don't get to track dinner because I went out, and that's what happens. But we don't go out that much. Most of the time we eat at home. I almost never go out for lunch anymore. That's been one of the major changes. I used to go out to lunch all the time. I can't control that variable. Now I go home, and like today, veggie pasta, chicken, boom, done. Or tuna sandwich, carrots, whatever I'm having that day. So track your numbers. And then number 2 would be add accountability. So if you really, a lot of people find this at a gym. You're one of the cult members of CrossFit. And so you all love each other. But in reality, I joke with Steve about that, and people watching are going to laugh because we know the CrossFit. How do you know if someone does CrossFit? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Y'all are obsessed with it. But really what you are obsessed with is accountability and with community around that. And so you've built friendships that value physical health and that will hold you accountable to the goals you set together. You have to have that, in my opinion, to succeed. Now, you and I built a relationship where we were checking in weekly. We've recently transitioned. We're going to go more monthly because I'm more in maintenance mode, and I kind of understand what I'm doing now. But I doubt we'll talk far more than monthly about what's going on.
We already have. Yeah, we text each other rather
several
regularly,
times a week.
And there's just kind of
ongoing talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the cool thing is we share each other's milestones and
celebrate,
we celebrate
with one another. Yeah, and it's people on the street don't care when you hit your protein goals and you hit your water goals, or you hit it's like I finally got that pound, or I
it's hard to shoot off fireworks for that, right?
Yeah, I conquered that kettlebell exercise and I can't lift my arm above my shoulder, but hey, so embracing accountability is something that God gave us. We don't like it because we don't like having people tell us what to do, or we don't like being held accountable. But that's pretty immature. A mature person goes, hey, I got a problem. I'm going to find someone who's good at this. Get accountability from someone who's good in that area. Like if you needed financial coaching, you're not going to go to, what does Dave Ramsey always say, your broke brother-in-law? Like, you don't want to go to the person who's super unphysically healthy. And by the way, they'll offer you all sorts of tips. Don't listen to them. Find the guy that's built at 51 and is in good shape. Like, I didn't need to know you did CrossFit. I could see Steve's in his 50s and is in good shape. That's not an accident. I'll ask Steve. You were the first person I asked because I'm like, who's healthy? Who's someone that loves the Lord? Who can bring me along in this? And so that would be my advice. Track your numbers, track your weight. When it comes to weight, I would tell you either never weigh yourself and just be like, I'm never going to weigh myself, or weigh yourself every day, because it's this. And if you weigh yourself every day, then you'll hopefully see downward progress over a month. But if you are only going to weigh on one Wednesday and then next Tuesday and then the following, Saturday, what if you just happen to pick all up days? You're going to quit your plan. So I really think if you're going to weigh yourself, do it every day, track it, get one of the scales or whatever that hooks up with your phone. It's super easy. Or don't do it at all. Some people would say would disagree with the don't do it at all, but I have friends that'll be like, I hate the scale, so I'll weigh some days and then I get off and then I won't weigh for 3 weeks. Now there's days I strategically don't weigh because I just don't want to deal with it. But for the most part, I think we need to know our numbers and we need to track them. And so that would probably be my 2 big things. Track your numbers. It's a math problem.
One last thing I want to bring up, and this is critical for listeners who struggle. Your weight loss journey has not been a linear slope downward. No. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Yeah.
Because that had to be very frustrating, and everybody deals with that, and that's why we quit, right?
Yep. So it literally, if you open up the scale app I have, it's like Renfo or something like that. It's the number 1 seller on Amazon. It's like $30, but it's got a Bluetooth connection to my phone and it tracks, but you can pull your data. And if you did a line, it would be this. Now you'll see my hand is going down, but it goes down 0.2, up 0.6, down 0.8, up 1, down 2.5. How did that happen? Oh, up 1.3. There you go. That was I was underwater that day. Like, I didn't drink enough water. Steve's going to yell at me. Like that was a water weigh in. For the week though, I'm down 1.2. Oh, okay. Now the variation in that, or if you're weighing in morning and night, the variation is going to be, for me, it's 4, 5, 6 pounds in a day.
It's mental gymnastics for your mind if you're tracking it every day.
And so you've got to know that it's just going to be up and down. And that's why I say you got to do it every day, so that way you could go. And so that's what we did every Friday. I knew Friday was my day. Now, some days I had high Friday, some days I had low, but I think every week I lost something. Some weeks it was 0.5. Some weeks it was 2, 2 pounds, whatever. But it was usually something. But if you would have said, text me on a Monday and then on a Wednesday, I might have been like, I gained. I don't know how. I didn't eat enough calories to gain weight. That doesn't make sense, literally math-wise. And I was telling Becca one time, I'll end on this, but I said, I told her early on, I said, I'm going to hack my body and I'm going to figure it out perfectly. And I'm going to know exactly what I'll weigh at the end of the day. And I'll know exactly what I'm going to weigh at the beginning. And I'll know if I eat these exact foods, I'll lose this exact amount of weight. And if I do this exact exercise, because in my mind, again, type A, breaking news, it's a math problem. I got to burn these calories. A certain exercise applied to do. That was the dumbest thing I've ever said.
The body said differently, didn't it?
It's you will not hack your body. You will drive yourself nuts if you do that. So instead, what I had to shift to, and this, I'm not always perfect at this, is trust the plan.
Trust the plan. Trust the process.
Get a good process. And then you know what? Over time, you can lose 50 pounds. And if I can lose it, anyone can lose it. Seriously, I had some of the most jacked up relationship with food. But now let's do another one in 6 months. And we'll say, okay, Craig, did you keep it off? Because I'm pulling into maintain station. Okay, now are you still exercising because that's what a healthy person does? Versus you have a goal you're trying to reach.
And that's really what we're trying to accomplish here is we share our stories and we kind of divulge some of our challenges and our egos to one another, right? Hoping that other people can glean from that. And really what we want people to take away is that we understand where you're at. We've kind of been there yourself. You can argue especially. And me as over the 50 yard line, if you will. And
you're really hoping for a 100-yard field
there. Really. I'm just hoping for a long field goal at this point. Let's face it. But, there's not just hope, but there's a reality that you can be what God is expecting you to be and be able to accomplish goals and move functionally. But just if you have those questions, we want people to reach out, right? We want them to reach out to you and just come and talk to us.
Neither of us are pitching any products.
No, we
don't have a team to join.
We really don't
have a gym you should join.
We're not selling you anything. We have nothing to sell except we just want to help and be able to pay that forward.
Because you want to pay forward. You've had mentors in your life. Now I've had a mentor. I want to help people. You never charged me a dime. It was all free knowledge, but you've given me hours and hours and hours of your time. But it's meant something to you to get to watch someone succeed. Your mentors, same thing. Hey, Steve's succeeding. And I want to do the same thing with people. when we come back, we'll probably be wearing different clothes, and maybe we'll finally have more stuff in here. But we'll have this same kind of conversation, and we'll talk about emotional health, which men love.
That'd be a big hit.
Yeah. That's
and you and I might just sit here and stare at each other for an hour.
But the truth is, how do we not just become meatheads? We are actually in touch with ourselves. We actually know who we are. We know who God's called us to be. How do we have a marriage that survives, or not just survives, but thrives? We actually know how to talk with our wife. We have a relationship with our children. We become more than the proverbial dad that just says K to everything, whether it's in text or in real life, because we actually know what's going on in our heart. So next time we hang out with them on Exceptionally Average, we will discuss emotional health. How's that sound?
It sounds like a great plan. I'm looking forward to it. Good talking to you,
This was a great first episode, I think.
It was a lot of fun.
We enjoyed it at the very least.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for listening.